Rick Barry's notorious watermelon grin remark aired on national television, casually critiquing someone sporting that grin on the left. Meanwhile, Meyers Leonard ruins his reputation in mere moments with a live anti-Semitic slur. Cowards who F*** like me. These are among the most appalling and racially charged incidents linked to NBA figures. Dennis Rodman, known as the Worm, earned a name for his tenacity on the boards and vibrant personality. However, in his rookie season of 1987 with the Detroit Pistons, he sparked racial controversy that shadowed him for years. After Larry Bird dazzled Detroit with 37 points in a Game 7 playoff victory, Rodman was queried about Bird's excellence. In frustration, he remarked that Bird was overrated and received acclaim merely for being white. He stated, "Larry Bird is overrated in many aspects. I don't see him as the greatest player. He's immensely overrated." Rodman further claimed that Bird gained so much attention due to his race, asserting, "You never hear of a black player being the greatest." Isiah Thomas, his teammate, exacerbated the situation with the controversial statement, "If he were black, he'd just be a regular basketball player." The remarks ignited media furor, with outlets portraying it as reverse racism, prompting the NBA to step in. Bird maintained his composure, opting not to escalate the issue, yet insiders noted he used it as motivation against the Pistons in future games. Under pressure, Rodman later retracted his remarks, expressing regret and asserting, "I'm not a racist," but it wasn't the last time his words got him into hot water. In 1997, while playing for the Chicago Bulls, he faced a $50,000 fine, the largest ever at that time, after referring to Utah Jazz fans as Mormons during the finals. Recently, in 2024, he went viral again, faced with backlash for making a so-called racist Indian joke during a live stream. Rodman's comments are part of a larger persona, a provocateur who thrived on stirring controversy, though many saw them as crossing a line, exposing a troubling readiness to use race and religion as instruments of ridicule. This is especially ironic given Rodman's own vocal stance against prejudice. His controversies underscore how words can ignite widespread outrage. Shifting to 2001, we find another case involving a rising star, known more for his flashy play than any sort of controversy. That was Jason Williams, who thrilled NBA fans with dazzling no-look passes and bold plays that earned him the alias White Chocolate. However, in 2001, his reputation took a nosedive when he directed a racially charged outburst at an Asian American fan. During a Sacramento Kings matchup with the Golden State Warriors, while sitting on the bench, he was heckled by fan Michael Chee. Rather than brushing it off, Williams retorted, "Do you remember the Vietnam War? I'll take you down just like that," followed by derogatory slurs aimed at Asians. The crowd around couldn't believe what they heard, and the media jumped on the story. The league hit Williams with a fine, and he later apologized publicly, acknowledging it was a moment fueled by immaturity and rage. This incident sparked a discussion about his nickname, with critics arguing that White Chocolate objectified his skills as a white player, showcasing a style deemed black. Supporters viewed it as a benign moniker that admired his flashy play. However, after the outburst, the nickname faced fresh criticism, suggesting it highlighted complex racial dynamics tied to his image. Unlike others, Williams' incident seemed to be an isolated one. He didn't have a history of racial issues, and in time, his apology was accepted. But for Asian American fans, his words were particularly hurtful, especially in a league with a history of anti-Asian slurs. His experience illustrates how a single incident can tarnish a reputation that has been built on talent and charm. The enduring significance of Williams' case lies in how swiftly competitive emotions can spiral into racially insensitive remarks, leaving lasting scars that transcend the game itself. His story exemplifies how anger and words can shape a player's identity. Yet our next narrative highlights how a single, publicly broadcast word can abruptly end a career. Enter Meyers Leonard. Leonard was an NBA center who played for the Portland Trail Blazers and Miami Heat. While he wasn't a superstar, he found his niche as a diligent player. However, in March 2021, his career came crashing down during a live Twitch stream while gaming. Frustrated in a Call of Duty match, Leonard uttered an anti-Semitic slur, which thousands heard live, spreading rapidly on social media. Within hours, he was labeled a racist, and clips of the outburst dominated sports media. Initially, Leonard claimed he didn't know the term's meaning, but the damage was done. The Miami Heat slapped him with a $50,000 fine and suspended him indefinitely, marking the end of his time with the team. He later attempted to mend his reputation through apologies, discussions with rabbis, and Jewish cultural events, vowing to educate himself. Yet his career was effectively over. He regrettably stated that it was a significant mistake. Leonard's case illustrates how athletes today are constantly scrutinized in an era of live streaming. A moment of anger isn't simply overheard. It's broadcast globally and eternally documented online. Although he has expressed remorse and sought redemption, Leonard will forever be remembered as the player whose career was wrecked by a fleeting but hateful word. His situation ignited broader discussions about anti-Semitism in sports, showing the urgent need for education around these issues. Leonard himself embraced this narrative, engaging with organizations and Holocaust survivors to comprehend the ramifications of his actions. Still, critics argue that regardless of his subsequent education, the slur revealed troubling beliefs about what he deemed acceptable in competitive settings. Post-NBA, Leonard aims to rebuild his image through community service and sporadic basketball appearances. He hopes to be remembered for his growth from that incident on Twitch, yet the stigma remains. When discussions of racism and hate speech within the NBA emerge, his name resurfaces as a cautionary example of how swiftly a career can disintegrate. His downfall illustrates how fame amplifies accountability. With greater visibility comes greater consequences when prejudice seeps through. Leonard's experience showcases the modern world's propensity to magnify errors. Next, we spotlight a veteran sharpshooter whose holiday message to Chinese fans sparked outrage for seemingly containing a racial slur. This is J.J. Redick. J.J. Redick established a lengthy NBA career as one of the most reliable three-point shooters. A standout from Duke, he played for teams like the Orlando Magic, Los Angeles Clippers, and Philadelphia 76ers. Generally recognized for his professionalism and shooting prowess, Redick's career remained largely untainted until 2018. That year, he featured in an NBA video wishing Chinese fans a happy Lunar New Year. However, when the clip aired, viewers quickly spotted something unsettling. At one point, Redick appeared to say he wished all the NBA Shank fans in China a happy New Year, inadvertently including the word chink, a well-known racial slur against Chinese individuals. An uproar ensued, and Redick promptly addressed the fallout, clarifying that he never intended to use the slur, claiming it was a misstatement as he meant to say Chinese but got tongue-tied. He issued a heartfelt apology, yet the NBA opted not to penalize him, and some fans accepted his explanation. Nonetheless, many, particularly in China, felt his credibility was tarnished. The situation's gravity was magnified by its timing. The late 2010s and early 2020s witnessed a surge in anti-Asian hate incidents globally, particularly spurred by the COVID-19 pandemic. In such a climate, even an unintentional slip bore heavy consequences. Redick has since transitioned into media and podcasting, maintaining his credibility as an analyst. However, that clip remains a permanent stain, resurfacing whenever discussions of racism in the NBA arise. For Redick, this incident underscores how in public perception, intentions often take a backseat to how words can leave indelible marks even within a respected career. Transitioning from Redick's slip to the 1980s, we remember NBA legend Rick Barry, who flippantly shared a stereotype on live television, illustrating how normalized racist humor once was in sports broadcasting. Rick Barry is celebrated as one of the greatest scorers in NBA history, renowned for his unorthodox free throw technique. However, his off-court reputation paints a more complex picture, marked by his unfiltered and often abrasive nature. Barry faced significant backlash throughout his career for casually using racist language and jokes. His most notorious moment occurred during his broadcasting tenure in the 1980s when he casually employed a racial stereotype on air, referring to a black player as having a watermelon grin. The phrase, steeped in racist caricature, incited outrage as many viewers expressed their disgust that such language was aired nationally. Networks received a barrage of complaints, with criticism mounting against Barry for perpetuating racist narratives at a time when the NBA was striving to present itself as a progressive, multicultural league. Barry later dismissed the uproar, claiming he aimed for humor. Yet for many fans and players, it symbolized a profound insensitivity. Whispers of racial insensitivity had long painted Barry's reputation among peers, with teammates describing him as abrasive and dismissive, often singling out black players for critique while heaped praise upon white counterparts. Some considered this merely a facet of Barry's personality, while others viewed the watermelon grin comment as a confirmation of deeper prejudices. Even years on, the incident shadows him. For younger generations, it serves as a stark reminder of how commonplace racist humor used to be in sports broadcasting and how such words can still carry weight decades later. Ranging from that slip of the tongue, we delve into even darker territory, focusing on Gilbert Arenas, a player who hurled his frustration at an entire nation in an unhinged tirade. Gilbert Arenas, aka Agent Zero, was one of the NBA's most electrifying scorers in the mid-2000s. However, while his prowess on the court catapulted him to stardom, his off-court shenanigans consistently landed him in hot water. The most concerning incident transpired long after his retirement, when he unleashed a racist diatribe against South Sudanese players. In a 2018 Instagram video, Arenas derided South Sudanese athletes, claiming they looked like monsters and asserting that their physiques weren't suited for basketball. His derogatory comments aimed at current NBA players of Sudanese descent went viral, shocking fans who had previously admired his humor. His words drew immediate backlash, as many highlighted that Arenas not only mocked an entire ethnic group, but reinforced harmful stereotypes about African players. Advocacy groups urged him to apologize, while NBA fans tore him apart on social media for belittling athletes breaking barriers for their nation. Initially brushing the comments off as jokes, Arenas found himself overwhelmed by the backlash, with critics pointing to his history of reckless behavior, including the infamous locker room gun incident, as indicative of a troubling pattern. This time, however, the racist undertones were undeniable. Although he eventually issued an apology, the damage was already done, forever marring his reputation. Many viewed Arenas' actions as a prime example of squandered talent, a player with potential to be recognized as one of the greats, overshadowed by his reckless conduct. His rant stands as a lasting reminder of how racism can tarnish a legacy, living on in the age of social media. Arenas' outburst revealed the destructive nature of racism, easily undermining reputations long after retirement. Not all controversies arise in online spaces. Some unfold during critical playoff moments. This was evident for one of the NBA's biggest stars, Shaquille O'Neal. Shaquille O'Neal, one of the most formidable players in NBA history, celebrated for his size and drive, encountered backlash for racially insensitive remarks aimed at Asian players. In 2003, upon the entry of Yao Ming into the NBA as the league's first Chinese superstar, Shaq made an infamous comment. When asked about facing Yao, he remarked, "Tell Yao Ming, Qing Chong Yanghua Aso," language perceived as a mocking imitation of Chinese. At the time, Shaq dismissed it as innocent banter, but outrage erupted among Chinese fans and advocates, compelling him to issue an apology, admitting he crossed a line. He later claimed that he and Yao were friends, asserting no malice was intended. Yet for millions, especially within China, the damage was palpable. The clip circulated online for years, cited as a stark example of how revered athletes occasionally wield stereotypes carelessly. This wasn't Shaq's sole controversy. In 2014, he posted a mocking Instagram selfie imitating Jamal Binion, a Michigan man with ectodermal dysplasia, a rare condition that alters facial appearance. Lacking racial motivation, it nonetheless drew criticism, establishing a pattern where Shaq used his platform to ridicule marginalized individuals. Following significant backlash, he ultimately apologized. Shaq's missteps highlight how humor can veer into insensitivity. Though many fans have forgiven him, critics contend his jokes reveal a tendency to overlook how his words and actions impact marginalized communities. The cases act as reminders that even the most beloved stars are not exempt from scrutiny when racial insensitivity arises. From Shaq's controversial remarks, we arrive at the tale of Larry Johnson, a former player whose racially charged statements about his own league ignited fierce debate. Larry Johnson, a two-time All-Star and pivotal player for the Charlotte Hornets and New York Knicks, was known for both his tenacious playing style and his memorable Grandmama commercials. However, in 1999, Johnson ignited controversy with remarks regarding race within the NBA. During the Knicks playoff campaign, he stated he believed his team was adversely treated by referees due to their racial composition, likening the Knicks to rebellious slaves and asserting that white executives were keen to see them fail. This incendiary comment ignited outrage. Many accused Johnson of trivializing slavery by equating millionaire athletes with enslaved individuals, while columnists condemned his racially divisive claims. Meanwhile, NBA officials expressed their frustration privately. Johnson maintained that he spoke metaphorically about the disparity of power between predominantly black players and predominantly white ownership. Supporters posited that he illuminated valid concerns about systemic inequalities within the league. However, the fallout overshadowed what was meant to be a celebrated playoff run, shifting focus from his team's success to his controversial comments. Even teammates expressed discomfort with the surrounding attention. Johnson later attempted to clarify his statements, yet the damage was already inflicted. Over the years, these comments have been revisited within the broader context of conversations about race and labor in sports. Some consider him to have been ahead of his time in highlighting issues of power and exploitation, whereas others still view his language as reckless. Regardless, his remarks remain a pivotal part of the dialogue surrounding race and economics in the NBA. Johnson's statements thrust race front and center within NBA labor discussions. Decades prior, two legends from the St. Louis Hawks made headlines for allegedly forcing a black teammate out of the league. First, we consider Bob Pettit. Bob Pettit stands as the NBA's inaugural MVP and one of the league's earliest icons. Playing for the St. Louis Hawks during the 1950s and 60s, Pettit was hailed as a gentlemanly superstar. However, alongside these accolades exists a troubling narrative surrounding his involvement in conspiring against a teammate, Cleo Hill. In 1961, when the Hawks drafted Hill, a prolific scorer from Winston-Salem State University, charting the first time a black player was chosen in the first round, he made an immediate impact by scoring 26 points in his debut. Yet reports indicated that Pettit and fellow Hawks Clyde Lavalette and Cliff Hagan felt threatened, approaching management with demands to limit Hill's shots. When coach Paul Seymour declined to bench Hill, Hawks ownership dismissed Seymour. As a result, Hill's playing time dwindled, and within a year, he found himself out of the league. This case has been extensively documented by historians, underscoring Pettit's involvement in what amounted to a blackballing. While Pettit later claimed the dispute revolved around Hill's playing style, the optics of three white stars pressuring management against a promising black rookie were impossible to ignore amid the racial tensions of the 1960s South. Hill expressed the pain it inflicted upon him, feeling robbed of a career before it could truly begin. This incident now serves as a stark reminder that racism in the NBA can manifest beyond slurs or overt hostility. Sometimes it involves power dynamics and gatekeeping. Pettit's otherwise pristine reputation is now marred by allegations regarding his treatment of a trailblazer for black collegiate athletes. For Hill, the result was a lost career. For Pettit, the shadow of that accusation lingers over his otherwise celebrated resume. Pettit's alleged role in the demise of Cleo Hill is troubling enough, but he wasn't the sole Hawks star implicated. Cliff Hagan was similarly accused. Cliff Hagan, a Hall of Famer and five-time All-Star, played a crucial role in the St. Louis Hawks' alleged blackballing of Cleo Hill. Along with Pettit and Lavalette, he was accused of pressuring management to restrict the rookie's play due to his race and for attempting to score too many points for a first-year player. Reports indicate Hagan, along with Pettit and Lavalette, confronted Coach Seymour, demanding he'll be benched. When Seymour refused, Hawks ownership sided with their veterans and fired him mid-season. Consequently, Hill's playing time was drastically reduced, and he never made a significant impact in the league again. Historians have recounted Hagan's involvement as one of the most explicit instances of racial exclusion in the NBA's history. Hagan never admitted guilt publicly and, like Pettit, asserted that Hill simply didn't fit the team's offensive style. However, Hill's remarkable legacy at Winston-Salem State and his early flashes of potential in the NBA challenged this narrative. To many, the idea that his performance wasn't sufficient doesn't hold up, particularly considering three white stars working to safeguard their own positions in a segregated city. Though Hagan's accomplishments remain celebrated, including being part of the Hawks' 1958 championship team, his name is inextricably linked to the Cleo Hill scandal. The incident serves as a reminder of how racism in the NBA can operate subtly, influencing decisions behind closed doors, often dramatically altering athletes' trajectories. The legacies of Hagan, Pettit, and Lavalette are indelibly shaped by this stain. From Hagan's role in burying Cleo Hill, we shift to another narrative on this list that reveals how racism shaped the NBA's formative years: Clyde Lavalette. Clyde Lavalette, an early dominant big man in the NBA, standing at 6'9", garnered 3 championships across 3 teams: the Minneapolis Lakers, the Boston Celtics, and the St. Louis Hawks. On the surface, his Hall of Fame career appears as a success story. However, for those who played against him, Lavalette epitomized a more troubling reality, facing repeated accusations of targeting black players with slurs and discriminatory behaviors. One of the earliest allegations arose in 1959 when Wilt Chamberlain entered the league as a rookie sensation. Reports suggest Chamberlain endured racial abuse from Lavalette, who supposedly shouted the N-word at him during a game. As the story goes, Lavalette was ejected, cementing Chamberlain's disdain for him. Years later, during a heated finals confrontation, Wilt retaliated by punching Lavalette on the court. Chamberlain wasn't the only one to experience this. Lenny Wilkins, who played alongside Lavalette in St. Louis, also felt the brunt of Lavalette's racism, recounting derogatory language directed at him too. Lewis once noted that Clyde Lavalette had difficulties accepting black players. The most notorious incident occurred in 1961 when the Hawks selected Cleo Hill, the first-ever first-round choice from a historically black college. Hill's skills were evident, scoring 26 points in his first game. However, reports indicated that his white teammates, including Lavalette, Bob Pettit, and Cliff Hagan, perceived him as a rival. They allegedly approached management, insisting he should take fewer shots. When coach Paul Seymour refused to bench Hill, the Hawks' ownership dismissed Seymour. Hill's playing time was diminished, and within a year, he was essentially blackballed from the NBA, seeing his career extinguished before it fully began. Lavalette's involvement in this episode is notable. Supporters have argued this was a matter of team dynamics rather than race, with Pettit later asserting that Hill wasn't suited for their style of play. Yet, the image of 3 white stars forcing a black rookie out of the league in the racially charged atmosphere of St. Louis suggests a grimmer narrative. For Hill, it represented a profound personal loss. For Lavalette, it became part of a legacy marred by allegations of prejudice and exclusion. Beyond the court, Lavalette's story serves as a potent example in conversations about race and sports, illustrating that even celebrated figures can partake in the oppression of black talent when it jeopardizes their own status. Thank you for watching. If you like this video, click one of the boxes now showing on your screen to explore more related content.